My fiancé was the top bully at our elite academy, but after being challenged by the only scholarship student from a poor background, he fell hopelessly in love with her. He said she was resilient, kind-hearted, and unlike anyone else, a ray of light that illuminated his life. For her sake, he broke off our engagement, cut ties with his family, and moved with her into the slums. He finally found the freedom and the love he had always wanted, and then, he regretted it. When he saw Lin Shuchuan again. He was at the market buying groceries with Jiang Yao. In the noisy, bustling market, he stood awkwardly on the muddy ground, watching as Jiang Yao haggled relentlessly with the vegetable vendor, insisting on getting a bunch of spring onions thrown in for free. The auntie waved her hand impatiently and said with disdain, "Fine, don't buy it then, you look decent enough, but can't even spare a few cents. What are you doing buying vegetables? Go home and drink the northwest wind." Lin Shuchuan's face flushed red as he turned to leave, but Jiang Yao grabbed his arm and started haggling with the auntie again. "All right, forget the scallions, how about throwing in a clove of garlic for free?" Grumbling under her breath, auntie stuffed a head of garlic into the bag. Jiang Yao, brimming with smug satisfaction, glanced at Lin Shuchuan beside her. So, pretty impressive, huh? Yet he kept his head down, silent, his fingers gripping the bag so tightly they turned white. The young master, once living a life of unimaginable luxury, could casually drop 5 figures on black truffles alone during a single Michelin-starred outing. Now, he's caught in a public tug-of-war over a few measly cents, looking as if he wished the ground would swallow him whole. The driver watching nearby clicked his tongue and remarked, "Young Master Lin used to buy multi-million-dollar supercars without batting an eye. Now he's haggling over a bunch of scallions. How the mighty have fallen." I rolled down the car window and looked away. Let's go. 3 months ago, Lin Shuchuan was still a young master living in the lap of luxury. His first encounter with Jiang Yao was purely accidental. The Lin family was immensely wealthy, with Lin's father being the richest man in the province. As the eldest son, Lin Shuchuan was the center of attention wherever he went, constantly surrounded by a group of followers. In stark contrast, Jiang Yao was the only scholarship student in our elite academy. Where the annual tuition alone cost $1 million, her entire family lived in a slum on the outskirts of the city. She was admitted on a special scholarship due to her exceptional academic record. By all rights, their paths should never have crossed. That changed one day when Jiang Yao caught Lin Shuchuan disciplining a younger student. She rushed over, slapped down his raised arm, and scowled. "How can you bully a classmate? Lin Shuchuan, you think your family's money makes you special? Apologize to him right now." No one had ever dared to hit him before. Lin Shuchuan froze on the spot. After that, he started picking on Jiang Yao at every turn. He bullied and teased Jiang Yao, belittling and humiliating her in front of everyone, ordering her around to run his errands. But Jiang Yao never backed down. I don't know when Lin Shuchuan fell for Jiang Yao. Maybe it was that time she cried her eyes red but still refused to back down to him. Lin Shuchuan started paying more and more attention to her. He became fascinated by everything about her, always finding excuses to be around her. He even stopped riding home with me after school, clumsily following Jiang Yao onto the crowded bus instead. He fell head over heels for Jiang Yao. He said she was strong, kind-hearted, and unlike anyone else, she was the light that illuminated his life. To that end, he went so far as to bring Jiang Yao to my birthday party, announcing in front of everyone that he wanted to call off our engagement. Mrs. Lin was so furious she nearly fainted, pointing a trembling finger at Lin Shuchuan and scolding, "Have you lost your mind? Why on earth did you have to say this today, of all days, and in front of everyone? What is Sang Ning supposed to do now? What on earth is so great about her? Has she put you under some kind of spell?" Lin Shuchuan frowned, holding Jiang Yao's hand, and said, "I've had enough of your hypocritical ways. Jiang Yao may be poor, but she's nothing like you. She's genuine and kind-hearted. She's 10,000 times better than Sang Ning. Sang Ning isn't even fit to hold her shoes." I was stunned. I never expected Lin Shuchuan to say that about me. He used to tease me as my fiancé, and in those shy, ambiguous moments, he even called me wifey. I thought he liked me. Yet now, the undisguised contempt in his eyes felt just as real. I looked at Jiang Yao and said firmly, "Is this your idea of kindness? To humiliate another girl on her birthday by holding her fiancé's hand. You knew I was engaged to Lin Shuchuan. Why did you get involved with him? Jiang Yao's face flushed, then she straightened her posture, her expression taking on a look of fearless resolve. Sang Ning, Lin Shuchuan is not an object, not a tool for you to trade interests through marriage. He's a living, breathing person. You may have an engagement, but he doesn't love you. He loves me. Feelings can't be forced. I hope you can give us your blessing. Marriage alliance. I chewed on those 2 words and let out a scornful laugh. I have no idea why she thought it was a marriage of alliance. Maybe Lin Shuchuan told her that, but this engagement can hardly be called an alliance. After all, my family is in the internet industry while the Lins are in manufacturing. There's no real connection. It's just that our families have been close for generations, and Shuchuan and I grew up together since we were kids. They simply thought we were a good match. Lin Shuchuan didn't object at the time, either. Now you're making it sound like I'm the villain who abducted him. Mrs. Lin was so furious she nearly fell backward, her voice beginning to tremble. Lin Shuchuan, get her out of here. Let me make this clear. I do not approve of you 2 being together. You will apologize to Sang Ning this instant. Jiang Yao's slender frame trembled as she cried out, her voice choked with tears. You are Lin Shuchuan's mother. How can you control him as if he were your property? You should respect him. He is your son, not your possession. He is a free man with an independent spirit. It was quite a passionate speech. But unfortunately, apart from Lin Shuchuan who was gazing at her with shining eyes, no one else in the room could appreciate it. Mrs. Lin let out a cold laugh, barely suppressing her anger as she said, why don't you ask him yourself? Did we force him or tie him up to attend the engagement back then? He agreed to it himself back then. And now you're telling me I'm the one disrespecting him. Who's disrespecting who here? Jiang Yao was momentarily speechless, but pressed on. Auntie, feelings can change. They're engaged, not married. What era do you think this is? You can't keep Shuchuan trapped like this. This is an arranged marriage. Lin's mother took a deep breath and said, this is a family matter. It's not your place, an outsider, to stand here and pass judgment. I'd like to ask how your parents raised you. Did they teach you to meddle in the relationship of an engaged couple? She slammed her hand on the table. Have you no shame? Jiang Yao said through her tears, no, Shuchuan and I are truly in love. He doesn't love her at all. An engagement without love is meaningless. Please, just let Shuchuan go, Auntie. Lin Shuchuan gritted his teeth and said, I never loved Sang Ning in the first place. Why are you all forcing me like this? Before I met Jiang Yao, I thought it didn't matter who I was with, but now that I've found her, she's the only one in my heart. Even now, thinking back on that day, I still don't understand it. Lin Shuchuan had plenty of ways to call off our engagement without embarrassing either family. If he had just spoken to me privately, I wouldn't have clung to him. His parents aren't snobs either. They might not have objected to them being together. Yet he chose to humiliate both families in this way, making me a complete laughingstock in everyone's eyes. Perhaps he was using me as a sacrifice to prove his devotion to Jiang Yao. In the end, all that remained in his parents' eyes was disappointment. They looked at Lin Shuchuan and issued their ultimatum. You want to be with her? Fine. Then don't ever come back. Everything of the Lin family will have nothing to do with you. Your brother will be the sole heir. We'll act as if we never had a son like you. Family, or this so-called love of yours, choose. Without a moment's hesitation, Lin Shuchuan grabbed Sang Ning's hand. I won't give up on her. Then, hand in hand, the 2 of them ran out of the Lin family's gate under the watchful eyes of everyone. It was like some cheesy TV drama plot where love defies the whole world. 3. The Lin parents did not relent. Lin Shuchuan's decision to cut ties with his family for a woman utterly broke their hearts. The Lin family stripped Lin Shuchuan of his inheritance, repossessed all his properties, houses, cars, and yachts, and froze his accounts. Yet even so, Lin Shuchuan did not change his mind. This feeling of defying the whole world for the one you love was perhaps an even more irresistible kind of romance to them. Word of my situation had spread throughout the school. When I went back, a few friends, feeling indignant on my behalf, locked Jiang Yao in the bathroom after school and told me to go and vent my anger. When I entered the bathroom, I saw Jiang Yao huddled in a corner. She was wearing an ill-fitting school uniform skirt that was coming apart at the seams. Her hair and face were wet, but her eyes blazed with a fierce, unyielding fire. Sang Ning, if Shuchuan finds out, he'll make you pay for this. I studied her for a moment, and a sudden wave of boredom washed over me. I waved a dismissive hand. Just let her go. Don't pull this kind of stunt again, it's pointless. Even though I had feelings for Lin Shuchuan, the day he humiliated me in public was the day I cut all ties to that man in my heart. Love is important to me. But it's not the most important thing. As for Jiang Yao, we were never on the same page to begin with. I despise her, but I can't be bothered to mess with her. Just as I was about to turn and leave, a flurry of hurried footsteps suddenly sounded from outside the door. Lin Shuchuan appeared in the doorway. After one glance at Jiang Yao, he flew into a rage, rushed over, and wrapped his coat around her. Then he looked up and glared at me, his voice icy. Sang Ning. I never thought you were this kind of person. I broke off the engagement because I don't like you. It has nothing to do with Yao Yao. How could you be so vicious? I was stunned. The disgust in his eyes was unmistakable. Even though I was ready to let him go, a cold, sharp pang still pierced my heart in that moment. I didn't, I said with a frown. It wasn't. Before I could finish, Lin Shuchuan cut me off. If it wasn't you, then who else could it be? You're lying. He traced the red mark on Jiang Yao's cheek, a flash of hatred crossing his face. How dare you hit her? I looked at Jiang Yao. From the moment I walked in until now, I haven't laid a finger on her. Yet there she was, trembling in Lin Shuchuan's arms, silent, letting everyone assume it was me who had struck her. Lin Shuchuan could take it no longer. With bloodshot eyes, he stood up and grabbed me by the throat. Whatever you did to her, I'll make you pay for it. Friends nearby rushed over to pull him away. Lin Shuchuan showed no mercy, and I, my face flushed crimson, bent over coughing until tears streamed down. Let go of me. I'm going to teach her a lesson today. No matter what. Lin Shuchuan continued to struggle. In the past, no one would have dared to stop him from saying that. But now, he has lost his inheritance rights. People in our circle are quite pragmatic. To punish Lin Shuchuan, his parents have already transferred their company shares to his younger brother, Lin Muchu. In other words, they are dead serious. This isn't just a scare tactic aimed at Lin Shuchuan. Lin Shuchuan has been completely blackballed from this circle. Sure enough, his friends were all grins and chuckles, but their grip on him didn't loosen. Come on, young Master Lin, that's enough. We're just messing around as classmates. No need to take it so seriously. Yeah, if Sang Ning gets hurt, this will blow up into a huge mess. You can't smooth this over anymore. Brother Lin, we're looking out for you. Lin Shuchuan's face was ashen. It was clear he knew he couldn't touch me today. He violently shook off the others, scooped up the tearful Jiang Yao, and turned to snarl at me. Sang Ning, you make me fucking sick. The greatest regret of my life was ever being engaged to you. I hid my trembling, ice-cold fingers behind my back and offered a flawless, unreadable smile. Is that so? What a coincidence. So am I. The Lin family parents weren't kidding when they said they'd cut off Lin Shuchuan's entire financial support. When it came time to pay the new quarter's tuition, the teacher called out the names of 2 students who hadn't paid for the first time. Lin Shuchuan, Jiang Yao, she said, pushing up her glasses with a frown. What's going on with you two? This is a school, not a charity. You must pay the tuition by the end of this week. Or don't bother coming to school. I was standing to the side, almost laughing out loud. Looks like the Lin family has been putting pressure on the school. In the past, a teacher would never have dared to speak to Lin Shuchuan like that. The Lin family is the biggest school trustee. Having invested at least a 9-figure sum into the institution, the teachers usually treat Lin Shuchuan like his God's gift to earth. But now, probably acting on his family's instructions, they seem intent on teaching him a lesson. Lin Shuchuan and Jiang Yao stood under the scrutiny of the crowd. Jiang Yao, accustomed to such situations, merely bit her lip and kept her head down in silence. As a scholarship student, she didn't need to pay the full tuition. She only had to cover the costs for books and uniforms, which amounted to just a few thousand yuan in total. Lin Shuchuan's situation was completely different. His annual tuition was over 1 million yuan, averaging out to more than 200,000 per quarter. He simply doesn't have that kind of money right now. Lin Shuchuan flushed with unbearable humiliation, unable to utter a single word. A mere couple 100,000 for tuition. In the past, Lin Shuchuan would easily drop more than that on a single night of buying drinks at the bar, yet now, he could only stand there and be publicly humiliated over what he once considered a trivial sum, clenching his fist. He tried to act nonchalant as he spoke to his former underlings. "You guys hold on to this for me, I'll pay you back later." His tone was as condescending as ever. Back when these lackeys were trying to curry favor with the Lin family, they'd been all respect, calling him Brother Lin this and Brother Lin that. But now, they just snorted with laughter and jeered. "Brother Lin, you're really putting us in a tough spot. 200 grand isn't a huge amount. But how are you going to pay it back right now?" "Exactly," another person chimed in, a mocking tone lacing his amused expression. "We can't exactly have you working some menial job to pay us back. Now can we? It'd be too pitiful to watch." "Brother Lin, my advice is to just transfer your little girlfriend to a public school. This place was never meant for the likes of you two, so why force it? Even if you scrape together the money this time, there'll be a next." Surely the great young Master Lin doesn't expect his brothers to support him for life, does he? Lin Shuchuan was far too arrogant, looking down on his underlings. It was common for him to berate and even hit them. They had tolerated him before just to curry favor with the Lin family. Now that he was clearly finished, all their pent-up resentment came pouring out in a torrent of scorn and mockery. Lin Shuchuan stood frozen in place, watching his former followers. A cold sweat began to bead on his forehead, a faint smile touched the corners of my lips. I'm sure this day will leave an indelible mark on Lin Shuchuan's life. From today on, he will finally understand the true cost of what he gave up for so-called freedom and love. Sensing his distress, Jiang Yaro held his arm and whispered softly, "It's okay, Shuchuan, we can find work, if we have to. I can ask my boss for an advance on my wages." Her voice trailed off as she spoke, even with another advance. There's no way she could get 200,000 on her salary. Lin Shuchuan was trembling all over when suddenly, Jiang Yaro's eyes lit up and she turned to me. "Sang Ning, you're so close with Shuchuan, why don't you pay his tuition for him?" I was taken aback. Jiang Yaro's statement was delivered with such casual certainty that I was momentarily at a loss for words. After a couple of seconds, I asked, perplexed, "What gave you the idea we were on good terms? Weren't you two engaged before?" I was stunned. In the first 17 years of my life, I had never met someone as shameless as Jiang Yao, and the genuine confusion on her face when she said it made me seriously wonder if I was the crazy one or if she was. I couldn't be bothered with her and just shot a look at my friend standing nearby. The friend caught on, stood up, crossed his arms, and said with a mocking tone, "Want money? Huh, that can be arranged. Kowtow to our sister Sang, and we'll give you 10 grand. That's more than enough to raise your worth, isn't it?" Jiang Yaro clenched her fists, saying indignantly, "How can you be like this? Aren't we all classmates? What's wrong with helping each other out?" Sang Ning, that bag you're carrying must have cost hundreds of thousands, right? You'd rather spend your money on such meaningless vanity than help out a friend. Who do you think you are, calling yourself Sangje's friend? A friend sneered. Is it because you live in the slums? Or just because you have a lot of nerve? I looked at Jiang Yaro and said calmly, "Don't try to guilt-trip me here. How I spend my money is my business. What gives you the right to judge me? If you're so fond of taking other people's money," I said, crossing my legs and speaking with deliberate calm, "you could always go out with a bowl and beg. You could easily make 100 or so a day, more than enough to support yourselves." "Enough." Lin Shuchuan shot me a resentful look. "You think I want your money, Sang Ning? I was right about you all along. You're no different from the rest of them, a hypocritical piece of trash." I laughed. Even a hypocritical scumbag is better than some self-righteous leech who just shamelessly begs for money, don't you think? Lin Shuchuan choked up. He couldn't take it anymore. The mocking stares of the people around him felt like physical blows. He was used to being the center of attention. But this was by far the most unbearable experience. He kicked the table over, grabbed his backpack, and walked out without a word. 5. Lin Shuchuan's tuition was finally paid. When he broke ties with his family, he was wearing a Vatron Constantine watch. His parents probably didn't think of it, so they never asked for it back. The watch sold for over 700,000, which just covered his tuition for the remaining 3 quarters. During the break, I had intended to go up to the rooftop for a while, only to find Lin Shuchuan and Jiang Yaro already there. Jiang Yaro hugged Lin Shuchuan from behind, Her voice choked with emotion as she said, "It's all because of me, because you're with me, that you've had to endure so much hardship. It's my fault, Shuchuan. Why is it so hard for us? It feels like the whole world is trying to keep us apart. Do you ever regret being with me? Would you ever leave me?" Standing behind Lin Shuchuan. She didn't see the flicker of hesitation that crossed his handsome face, his brow furrowed into a deep crease. Then, with a sigh, he turned and pulled Jiang Yao into an embrace, his tone laced with confusion, as if he were trying to convince her, or perhaps himself, "I don't regret it, I won't abandon you." His eyes hardened with fierce determination. "They look down on me now, thinking that without the Lin family, I, Lin Shuchuan, am nothing. I'm going to make every last one of them see that I, Lin Shuchuan, can damn well stand on my own 2 feet without the Lin family. I'm not going back. Don't worry, we're going to be okay." Jiang Yao let out a sigh of relief. "Okay, I believe you, Sang Ning. The only reason people like you is because you're the eldest son of the Lin family." She looked up, her eyes wide. "But I'm different. I like you just for who you are. Shuchuan, you're going to make it, I know you will." Watching the 2 star-crossed lovers huddled together on the balcony, cheering each other on with such naive and foolish determination, I couldn't help but laugh. How did I never realize before just how stupid Lin Shuchuan could be? Lin Shuchuan started looking for part-time work. He had lofty ambitions. Even during his summer internship at a subsidiary of the Lin family business, he went in with the informal title of Young Master Lin. Everyone at the company flattered him, subtly buttering him up and praising him as a born genius, a young achiever destined for great things in the future. Lin Shuchuan seemed to take it all to heart, applying only for high-yield positions like traders and investment managers. He claimed to be an expert in the stock market and said he could manage trades, but people took one look at his age and education, didn't even give him an interview, and just told him to get lost. Accusing him of being a troublemaker, without the Lin family behind him, who would even know who he was, Lin Shuchuan kept hitting walls. In the end, the only job he could find was delivering takeout, and even the electric scooter belonged to Jiang Yao. Every night after school, he'd go out to deliver food. To his credit, he stepped up like a real man, supporting Jiang Yao with his own earnings. Jiang Yao, who used to juggle 3 part-time jobs, was able to quit them all, one day. About 2 weeks later, I was riding home from school when we passed an alley. It was a notorious hangout for the local troublemakers near our school, a place where fights or illicit rendezvous were practically a daily occurrence. As I glanced at the crowd gathered there, I spotted 2 familiar figures just before I looked away. Lin Shuchuan and Jiang Yao were standing in a corner, and Jiang Yao was confronting one of the thugs with righteous indignation. "How dare you bully a fellow student? Apologize to this student right now." The person on the ground, pale with fear, quickly grabbed at her skirt. "It's fine. We were just messing around. Don't make a scene." Jiang Yao, however, showed no fear. "Don't be scared. Tell us what happened. My boyfriend and I will help you." "Alright then. Let's go tell the teacher right now. Come on." The little punks were almost laughing in disbelief. Where did this idiot come from? "Tell the teacher." He stepped forward and shoved Jiang Yao hard. "Go on then. Tell her." "Ha ha ha ha." Stumbling back a step, Jiang Yao grabbed Lin Shuchuan's hand and pleaded for help. "Shuchuan." There were 7 or 8 of them, while Jiang Yao only had herself and Lin Shuchuan on her side. Lin Shuchuan was no fool either. He frowned and pulled her back. "Let it go. Don't go looking for trouble. Let's get out of here." Jiang Yao's eyes widened as she admonished him sternly. "Shuchuan, how could you? But he's our classmate." The classmate being beaten on the ground was nearly in tears. "For heaven's sake, I'm begging you, just leave. I was fine before, but you're determined to watch me get a beating. Is that it?" "No way." Jiang Yao refused, saying, "You're just enabling a bully. Don't be afraid. Come on, let's go find a teacher together." "Are you out of your damn mind?" The thugs couldn't take it anymore. Cursing, one of them moved to slap Jiang Yao. She quickly ducked behind Lin Shuchuan and cried out in alarm. "Shuchuan, you have to protect me." Seeing that a beating was imminent, Lin Shuchuan said helplessly, "Guys, don't be rash. My girlfriend was in the wrong today. Let's just drop it." "Okay, I'll apologize to you on her behalf." Jiang Yao, however, wouldn't have it. She grabbed his clothes and scolded him. "Lin Shuchuan, are you even a man? They're about to hit your girlfriend and you're apologizing. Fight back. Jiang Yao desperately wouldn't let Lin Shuchuan leave. In the ensuing scuffle, Lin Shuchuan was forced to confront the thugs. He had trained in Sonda and Muay Thai before, but he was hopelessly outnumbered. He was quickly pinned to the ground and beaten senseless. Jiang Yao had retreated to a safe distance, crying and shouting from the sidelines, "Stop it, you two, stop fighting, stop it," I said. I almost burst out laughing. If I was still angry before because Lin Shuchuan called off our engagement in public, now I'm truly at peace. Jiang Yao is Lin Shuchuan's personal torment, isn't she? She's practically his living nightmare. Clearly, she's pulling the same old tricks she used on Lin Shuchuan before. The pity is, even though Lin can be a bit of a troublemaker himself, he's fundamentally a reasonable guy. That's exactly why she can manipulate him. What seasoned street punk is going to fall for her act? Is she asking for a beating or what? No, it wasn't her who got beaten up, it was Lin Shuchuan. The driver asked cautiously, "Miss, should we call the police?" Looking at Lin Shuchuan's blooded face, a smile slowly spread across my lips. No need, he should consider it an honor to take a beating for the woman he loves. 6. Lin Shuchuan hadn't shown up to school for several days in a row. Rumor had it he got beaten up pretty badly. What was worse, Jiang Yao had quit all her part-time jobs. With Lin Shuchuan unable to work, they had no income. So, Lin Shuchuan had no choice but to drag his injured body out to deliver food. Struggling to support them all, and even having to provide for Jiang Yao's parents as well. Jiang Yao's parents were both gambling addicts. In the past, whenever they came home after losing money, they would beat Jiang Yao. Now, Lin Shuchuan even had to set aside a portion of his money for Jiang Yao's parents to gamble away. In just 2 short months, he had wasted away to a shadow of his former self. The once confident and domineering air about him had completely vanished, replaced by deep furrows on his brow and an overwhelming weariness that clung to his entire being. When class ended and a few classmates drove off in their families' luxury cars to have fun, I clearly saw a flicker of envy in Lin Shuchuan's eyes. Jiang Yao nudged him from the side. "What are you standing around for? Let's go." "Oh." Lin Shuchuan averted his gaze, lowered his head, and began pushing his worn-out electric scooter, ready to start his food delivery shift. Just as she rounded the corner, a cat suddenly darted out and rubbed against Jiang Yao's ankle. With a smile, Jiang Yao crouched down, pulled a can of cat food from her backpack, opened it, and offered it to the kitten, gently stroking its head. "Little White has been putting on weight lately. I think she might be pregnant. Shuchuan, if she has kittens, what do you think about us adopting one?" Feeding the cats was one of the reasons Lin Shuchuan fell for Jiang Yao. Back then, I would take all the stray cats to be neutered and find them homes, while Jiang Yao would buy cat food and cans to feed them. Lin Shuchuan thought I was cold-hearted and ruthless, and said Jiang Yao was kind and compassionate, but now, he couldn't muster a smile. Just rubbing his temples in frustration. "We can barely afford to feed ourselves right now. Where would we get the extra cash for a cat? Your parents just asked me for another 3,000 yuan last week, and I don't even know where our grocery money for the next 2 weeks is coming from." He paused mid-sentence, his gaze dropping to the cat food can on the floor. "Where did this cat food come from? When did you buy it?" Completely unaware, Jiang Yao beamed with pride, her eyes crinkling into crescents. "I bought them on sale. These cans are originally 15 or 16 yuan each, but now if you buy 20, they're only 11 yuan per can. Pretty good deal, right?" Lin Shuchuan was stunned. Jiang Yao was completely absorbed, her head bowed as she petted the cat. "Look how adorable Xiaobai is. So carefree and happy." Sang Ning mentioned before about taking it to get neutered. What an ordeal that would be. How could she take away Xiaobai's right to have babies? She noticed Lin Shuchuan had been quiet the whole time and looked up. "Shuchuan." Lin Shuchuan squeezed his eyes shut, holding back until he finally snapped. He kicked the cat food can on the floor, sending it flying. The startled kitten let out a meow and scurried into a corner. Jiang Yao was both shocked and furious. "Lin Shuchuan, what the hell are you doing? You scared it." Lin Shuchuan clenched his fists tightly, his eyes slowly reddening with strain. "Jiang Yao, do you have any idea? I'm out there delivering food with injuries on my body, all to give money to your parents and support you. We're broke. We don't have a single cent left. Your parents took every last bit of my money. I couldn't even afford medicine at the hospital. I couldn't stay for treatment. I had to go home and just endure the pain alone. Do you know how little I make from a whole night of food delivery, and you have the nerve to sit here feeding the cat? Do you have any idea how long I have to work just to earn back the $200 you spent on that cat food? Jiang Yao, unable to contain her anger, raised her voice. I never asked you to keep it. Besides, I've been feeding Xiaobai all along, and you never said a word before. A flicker of despair flashed in Lin Shuchuan's eyes as he stepped forward and grabbed Jiang Yao by the collar. Who do you think I cut ties with my family for? Who do you think I got hurt for? If you hadn't pushed me to break off the engagement with Sungning at her birthday party, would my parents have kicked me out? If you hadn't been a complete idiot and provoked those people, would I have gotten hurt? Jiang Yao, for God's sake, snap out of it. But he's our classmate. How could I just stand by and watch him get bullied? Jiang Yao retorted. Then go get beat up yourself. Don't just shove me out there. Couldn't you have at least called the cops instead of watching me take the hits? I was terrified. Okay, and besides, you're fine. I'm your girlfriend. You wouldn't just stand there and watch me get hurt, would you? Their argument grew more and more heated, until Lin Shuchuan finally couldn't hold back and snapped. I fucking regret ever being with you. Look at the mess I'm in now. It's all your fault. I never begged you to be with me. Jiang Yao cried out. If you don't want to be together, you can just break up with me. Lin Shuchuan didn't argue with her any further. He looked utterly exhausted, yet also strangely relieved, as he gazed at her steadily and said, all right, Jiang Yao, let's leave it at that. With that, he threw down the electric scooter and strode away without a moment's hesitation. Shuchuan, Lin Shuchuan. No matter how Jiang Yao cried and called after him, he never looked back. 7. The love that Lin Shuchuan pursued at all costs lasted a mere 3 months. It was almost laughably brief. I never doubted that Lin Shuchuan truly loved Jiang Yao. The fact that a spoiled young master like him, raised in such privilege, could endure so much hardship for Jiang Yao proves just how deeply he cared for her. Yet this affection was far too fragile. Scattering at the first sign of a storm, he finally realized how cheaply so-called freedom and love were valued when faced with harsh reality. Crumbling at the slightest touch, he tried to go home. But the Lin family's gate was firmly shut against him. Lin Shuchuan had a younger brother named Lin Muchu, and the two of them had never gotten along well since childhood. Lin Shuchuan looked down on Lin Muchu and used to find all sorts of excuses to bully him. He said that while Lin Muchu appeared to be detached from worldly affairs on the surface, he was always scheming against him behind his back. Lin Muchu was born a year later than Lin Shuchuan. So their parents initially intended for Shuchuan to inherit the family business, while Muchu was simply meant to live a life of idle luxury. Yet he had always been resentful. Now that he finally had this opportunity, there was no way he would ever let Lin Shuchuan come back. It's unclear exactly how he poisoned their parents against him, but the result was that their hearts were utterly broken by Lin Shuchuan. No matter how much Shuchuan pleaded, they refused to let him return home. You were the one who said it yourself back then, that family and kin were less important than that woman. You chose this path yourself. Now, no matter what, you must face the consequences. Lin Shuchuan came to me as a last resort. For the first time since he unilaterally called off our engagement, he lowered his head to me, perhaps worn down by recent hardships. Lin Shuchuan's attitude was no longer condescending. Sang Ning, I was a fool to call off our engagement at your birthday party. I'm sorry for putting you through that. The Lin Shuchuan of the past was handsome and rebellious, the very image of a domineering school heartthrob from a TV drama. Now, with his head bowed, he had somehow learned the art of swallowing his pride. I didn't look at him. It's fine. What I went through was nothing. I heard you've been working odd jobs and getting beaten up. You've had it much worse than me. He clenched his fist, swallowing his pride as he said in a low voice, yes. I've learned my lesson. I'll never do it again. Let's reinstate our engagement. Okay, I promise I won't be so impulsive anymore. Consider this my apology. Alright, I scoffed. Are you out of your mind? I'm the sole heir of the Sang family. Just look at what you've become. You think you're worthy of being engaged to me. He held back his anger and said, my parents only kicked me out because I called off the engagement. If we just keep it going, they'll stop. Then I'll still be able to inherit the Lin family. I fell silent. It was only then that I understood why Lin Shuchuan had fallen for Jiang Yao, because from start to finish, they were the same kind of people, selfish and shameless. They are truly birds of a feather. I stood up, looking down at him, and said, Lin Shuchuan, I don't understand how you have the nerve to come and say this to me. When you wanted to chase after what you call love, you publicly broke off our engagement without a second thought for me or my family's reputation, and now that you want to come back to the Lin family, you just assume you can pick up the engagement again on your own terms. Who the hell do you think you are? I said, narrowing my eyes. Does everyone else's life have to revolve around you? Does the whole damn planet need to spin for your convenience? Lin Shuchuan flushed bright red. That's not it, I truly regret it. Jiang Yao is nothing like I imagined. She's just a hypocrite with a performative personality. She's completely unhinged. Right, I'm a hypocrite. Your parents are hypocrites. And Jiang Yao is a hypocrite. Oh, so only you, Lin Shuchuan, are genuine, I sneered. Why don't you just drop dead? I threw the exact same insult he had used back in his face. Lin Shuchuan, you make me sick. The greatest regret of my life was ever being engaged to you. 8. In the end, Lin Shuchuan never made it back to the Lin family. He believed it was all Jiang Yao's fault. If she hadn't seduced him, he wouldn't have ended up in this mess. He grew to despise Jiang Yao completely. To get back at her, he reconciled with her only to torment her deliberately, even got her pregnant, before cruelly dumping her. Devastated after the miscarriage, Jiang Yao's once excellent grades plummeted, leading to her expulsion from school. Her family couldn't afford to transfer her to another school, so Jiang Yao had no choice but to drop out and start working. When I saw her again, she was handing out flyers on a winter street. The bitter wind had chapped her once fair face a raw red, wrapped in a threadbare scarf. She shivered as she tried to press flyers into the hands of passers-by. New barbershop opening, top up 1,000, get 300 free, please take a look, sir. A passerby shoved her aside impatiently. I said no. Are you out of your mind? I watched for a moment, then rolled up the car window. I didn't harbor much hatred for Jiang Yao. She has paid the price she deserved, in a way. I even have to thank her for helping me see Lin Shuchuan for who he really is. Looking back on those so-called childhood memories now just makes me sick. Lin Shuchuan did manage to finish his final year of high school. Unfortunately, the Lin family still refused to cover his living expenses, forcing him to work constantly just to support himself. His grades never had a chance to improve, and in the end, he could only afford to attend a very low-cost technical college. Meanwhile, his younger brother, Lin Muchu, was already on the path his parents had laid out for him. He went abroad to study at Harvard Business School and, upon graduation, returned directly to take over the family business. 5 years later, I returned to China after completing my postgraduate studies and took over my own family's company. I have a boyfriend now. He comes from a family with a similar background to mine, and he's a genuinely good person who treats me very well. All those past events have completely faded from my life. My boyfriend picked me up in his Rolls-Royce in the evening. As we were waiting at a red light at an intersection, I suddenly froze. Let's go to that new place on South Street this Saturday. It's a newly opened 3-Michelin-star restaurant, and I've heard their steak is excellent. I watched the person on the electric scooter, dressed in a full yellow uniform. He was quite tall, but hunched over on the small scooter. He looked a bit awkward. He wiped the snowflakes that had flown into his eyes, then tucked his hands back into the grimy, insulated sleeves. Lin Shuchuan, it's been so long since I last saw him. Over the years, the relationship between my family and the Lin family has grown somewhat distant. I heard that later, Mr. and Mrs. Lin wanted to bring Lin Shuchuan back home, but Lin Muchu, who was already in charge by then, wouldn't allow it. There was nothing the elder Lins could do, and so, Lin Shuchuan was completely cast out by the Lin family. The memory of that spirited, handsome, and untamed young man is now so fragile, like a wisp of smoke scattered by a gust of cold wind from outside the window. Gone without a trace, impossible to gather back together. For a moment, I was dazed, wondering if my eyes were playing tricks on me. The car window rolled down, and he seemed to sense my gaze. Our eyes met across the bustling street, and he jerked his head away as if scalded. After a moment, he cautiously turned back, his lips parting as he looked at me. his expression a complex tapestry of unspoken emotions. He seemed to want to say something, but as the light turned green, the black Rolls-Royce quickly left the electric scooter behind and soon vanished from sight. In the end, I never did hear what he finally said. Ning Ning, my boyfriend, seeing I was lost in thought, turned and called my name. I snapped back to reality, smiled, and took his hand. Sure, whatever Lin Shuchuan is up to now has nothing to do with me. Everyone must eventually pay the price for their own foolishness and willfulness. It's just that back then, Lin Shuchuan stated with absolute certainty that he would have no regrets. I wonder if, when he thinks back on the past now, in the still of the night, he is utterly consumed with regret for his former stupidity. Story 2. After 30 years of marriage, my husband appeared on the cover of the news with another woman, and I was undergoing chemotherapy alone in the hospital on New Year's Eve. I had thought that I would die in mediocrity and being disliked in this life, unexpectedly. God gave me a chance to fulfill my dream of traveling around the world. Hello, everyone. Welcome to my channel. Subscribe us to read wonderful novels every day. Now the story begins. I was sitting on the chair in the chemotherapy room of the hospital. I could feel the cold medicine flowing into my body drop by drop. The sound of firecrackers came from outside the window, constantly reminding me that it was New Year's Eve today. Today, every household was filled with laughter and joy. Some families were sitting around watching the Spring Festival Gala, while others were playing cards and making dumplings. Only I was alone in the hospital, without a single family member by my side. My husband, James, and my son, Joseph, had gone to an academic seminar. My daughter-in-law and grandson had also booked their plane tickets early and were preparing to travel abroad. I shook my head with a bitter smile. It seemed that I would be spending the Spring Festival alone in the hospital again this year. The nurse came to change the infusion bottle. Seeing me silently crying alone, she gently comforted me. "Ms. Liz, don't be sad." I forced a smile and pretended not to care. "It's okay, I'm used to it." The time waiting for the vomiting reaction after chemotherapy was always long, and I was bored and swiping through my phone when suddenly a piece of news caught my attention. Famous scholar James and his wife, Emily, are still deeply in love and are known as a model couple in the academic world. I was stunned. I double-checked the content of the news. I remembered that Emily was James's college classmate. How did she become his wife? If Emily was James's wife, then who was I? My fingers trembling, I clicked on the news. In the photo, James affectionately stroked the face of the woman in his arms. The woman turned her head and smiled at him. Her well-maintained face had a gentle and elegant smile. The woman looked at least 10 years younger than me, but in fact, her age was about the same as mine. The text below the photo read, "Professor James and his wife, Ms. Emily." My mind went blank, and I could hardly believe what I was seeing. James had actually cheated on me behind my back and even had the audacity to show up in public with his mistress. He made everyone think that he and Emily were a couple. I took a deep breath and tried my best to calm down my agitated emotions. No wonder James had been getting colder and colder towards me over the years. It turned out that he had rekindled his old relationship with Emily long ago. I suddenly realized that the whole family might know about this, because my son, Joseph, had also gone to this academic seminar today. I was the only one kept in the dark, looking like a fool, thinking of my years of dedication and patience. My heart ached as if it had been cut by a knife. I held back my tears, not wanting to lose my composure in front of the nurse. The nurse, however, "Ms. Liz, are you okay? You look very pale. Is the chemotherapy reaction starting?" I forced a smile and said I was okay, asking her to go out first. In fact, my heart was already in turmoil, filled with mixed feelings. I wanted to be alone and calm down. I took out my phone and, with trembling fingers, took a screenshot and saved that trending news. I decided to confront James face to face when he came back. No matter what the result was, I wanted an explanation. In our 30-year marriage, I took care of his daily life. I never dared to go against his wishes. I gave birth to his children and took care of his parents until they passed away. Did my decades of dedication mean nothing to him? Not even as much as the smile of his old lover from decades ago. The chemotherapy reaction was very strong, and it was extremely uncomfortable. Every time, I felt as if I wanted to vomit out my internal organs. When James pushed the door open and came in, I had just finished vomiting in the bathroom. This was the 13th time I had vomited today. I was so weak that my steps were unsteady, and everything in front of me seemed to be spinning. He reached out to support me, but I shook him off. He was slightly taken aback and frowned in dissatisfaction, scolding, "What's wrong with you this time?" I shuffled to the bedside, took a deep breath, and held my phone in front of him. "What does this mean?" I tried to control my trembling voice. He glanced at the screen and his expression remained normal. "Oh, this," he said casually, "it's for academic research." I couldn't believe my ears. Did admitting that Emily was his wife also have something to do with academic research? What kind of academic research requires changing a wife? He lay down impatiently on the empty bed next to him. "You didn't even graduate from high school. What do you know? Emily is now a well-known scholar just like me. It's normal for us to cooperate together. Does this have anything to do with whether she is your wife or not?" I asked persistently. "This is more conducive to academic exchanges. Do you know how aggrieved I've been these years being with you?" He sneered and suddenly exploded, his voice full of disdain. "What do you know besides daily necessities? Emily is the one who really understands me." Every word of his was like a knife stabbing into my heart. He didn't care about my feelings at all and continued to complain about me. "Only with her can I regain my passion for academic research. What about you? Besides dragging me down, what else can you do?" I stood there, trembling all over. A few far-fetched reasons and complaints could easily cover up my 30 years of dedication. His indifference and nonchalance made me feel a bit dazed. When I first met him, he was still a high-spirited young man, and I was just an ignorant little girl. When he went to the countryside, he accidentally fell into the water. I happened to pass by and jumped into the icy river to save him when he was almost sinking to the bottom. I thought it was a wonderful encounter by fate. Unexpectedly, in his eyes, it had become a shackle that imprisoned his life. I looked at his familiar yet strange face. My heart filled with despair. The person I once loved deeply now said such hurtful words. I suddenly realized that this marriage had long been in name only. I was the only one who had been kept in the dark and had been foolishly giving. James was still chattering on, listing all my faults, but I couldn't listen anymore. I clenched my fists and held back my tears. No, I couldn't go on like this. I had to live for myself once. Just then, the door of the ward was pushed open, and James and I both turned our heads to look at the door. My son Joseph's voice came from outside. "Dad, Mom, I'm back." James and I looked at each other and saw the panic in each other's eyes. My son didn't know what had happened and happily pushed the door open. "Mom and Dad, I have some good news to tell you." His smile froze on his face when he saw our stiff expressions. "What's wrong? Did you two have a fight?" I opened my mouth, not knowing what to say. James took the lead and said, "It's nothing. Your mother is being unreasonable again." I looked at him in disbelief. And the last glimmer of hope in my heart was also shattered. It was me being unreasonable again. My son looked at me in confusion, then at his father, and without hesitation, stood on his father's side. "Mom, why are you making Dad angry again?" In his eyes, his father was always right, and I, as a mother, was always wrong. I took a deep breath and decided to make things clear with James in front of my son. Just then, my phone suddenly rang. It was a call from my attending doctor. When I answered the phone, my weak fingers were trembling. I accidentally touched the speakerphone button, and the words from the other end of the line made my face turn paler and paler. "Your leukemia has worsened, and you urgently need a bone marrow transplant. I remember you have a son. If the matching is successful." Memories flooded back, taking me back to that winter more than 30 years ago. At that time, I had just started high school and was ignorant. James was in college and came to the mountainous area where my family lived for the rural work program. As a young master who grew up in the city, he had no idea that the frozen river surface was not solid. Since the allocated food was not enough, he went fishing on the river and accidentally fell in. I happened to pass by. Seeing someone fall into the water, I jumped in without thinking to save him. The cold water was bone-chilling. I tried my best to drag him to the shore, but I suffered from a lingering illness as a result and became infertile for life. When James learned about it, he felt extremely guilty. He took the initiative to offer to take responsibility for me and marry me. My parents were traditional and conservative. They believed that it was useless for girls to study and that it was better to get married early, not to mention that the other party was from the city and was willing to marry me, an incomplete girl. They thought it was a great blessing for me. Just like that, before I could finish high school, I married James in a muddle. I thought that since James was willing to marry me even though he knew I couldn't have children, he must be a responsible and reliable man. For me, born in that era, marrying an intellectual from the city was a good destination. I naively thought that marrying him was the beginning of a happy life for the rest of my life. But the life after marriage was not as sweet as I had imagined. Taking responsibility didn't mean that he would treat me well, let alone care for and love me. He had always looked down on me, a country girl. In our daily life, he was as cold as ice towards me and often lost his temper for no reason. He would complain that the water I poured for him was too hot, and also complain that it was too cold. He would scold me for serving him too much rice, saying that I was trying to stuff him to death. He would also scold me for serving him too little rice, saying that I didn't know how to take care of people. I felt so wronged that I wanted to run away, but I was dissuaded by my family. They always said, "Just bear with it, everyone goes through this." So I gritted my teeth and persevered. Working even harder to manage our marriage, I cooked different kinds of food every day to make him happy and took better care of the housework to let him focus on his academic research without any worries. After the rural work program ended and we returned to the city, James wanted to pursue further studies, and I fully supported him. I worked during the day and did odd jobs at night. I lived frugally to support his studies and took care of his daily life. After years of hard work, James finally became a well-known scholar as he wished. I thought that I had finally endured enough and things would get better, but everything I had done was seen by James as a kidnapping of him. I was his unremarkable original wife, a rural woman who didn't even graduate from high school. But if it weren't for him, I could have finished high school and might have even been admitted to university. I would also be an intellectual like him. The memories suddenly stopped, and I felt a sudden dizziness. I leaned against the wall and slowly sat down, breaking out in a cold sweat. My consciousness gradually blurred, and the doctor's words echoed in my ears. "Your leukemia has worsened, and you urgently need a bone marrow transplant." I closed my eyes with a bitter smile. But my son wasn't my biological child. I slowly opened my eyes, and the ward was completely silent. I wanted to take off the oxygen mask because it made me feel uncomfortable. But I couldn't lift my hand no matter how hard I tried. I wanted to call for help, but there was no one around me. Once again, I was alone. I rubbed my head back and forth on the pillow and finally managed to get the mask off. The moment fresh air entered my lungs, I only felt a sense of suffocation. The alarm went off with a beeping sound, and the door of the ward was finally pushed open from the outside. My son's face was filled with anxiety. He held my hand. "Mom, how are you?" I barely opened my mouth and let out a weak voice. "I'm okay, don't worry." My son seemed to want to say something. He opened his mouth and then closed it, his eyes flickering, as if he had something to say but held back. But I spoke first and asked James, who was striding into the ward, in a cold voice, "Why are you here?" When I saw James, my blood pressure soared with anger, and the medical instrument let out a beeping alarm sound. My son stood up and looked at us with a complicated expression. "Mom, actually, Dad has always cared about you." I looked at my son in surprise. Was he blind? My son took a deep breath. "You've misunderstood Dad. His admiration for Aunt Lynn is only in an academic sense. You shouldn't slander Aunt Lynn and Dad out of jealousy." I widened my eyes in disbelief. "You?" My son glanced at his father, received his encouraging look, and continued, "They have been restraining their feelings for each other because of you. Over the years, they have been very aggrieved." I felt a sudden dizziness, and my chest heaved violently. Were these words coming from the mouth of the son whom I had raised with great difficulty? "How dare he? How long have you known about this?" I managed to say. My son lowered his head and didn't dare to look me in the eye. "For a long time. But that doesn't matter. What matters is that you shouldn't be unreasonable. Aunt Lynn has a great influence in the academic world, and she can help us." My heart ached as if it had been cut, and tears streamed down my face uncontrollably. "So, you've been lying to me all this time." James let out a sigh, wearing an expression of magnanimity as if he didn't want to argue with a woman. "Liz, you're being too petty. I've already said that my relationship with Emily is just a pure academic one. You have to make things so ugly. I clenched my fists, my vision blurred by tears, and I couldn't stop trembling all over. Ugly? Isn't it ugly that you hooked up with her behind my back? My son didn't understand my sadness and interrupted me. Mom, stop being unreasonable. The relationship between Dad and Aunt Lynn is beneficial to all of us. I closed my eyes, and hot tears welled up and fell. The warm memories of the past now only left a bitter taste. I thought that at least I still had my son. Unexpectedly, my son was also raised for someone else. I took a deep breath and slowly said, I want a divorce. As soon as I finished speaking, the ward fell into a dead silence. The expressions on James's and Joseph's faces changed from astonishment to anger. What did you say? James asked sternly. I took a deep breath and repeated, I want a divorce. My son suddenly stood up and glared at me. Mom, are you crazy? How can you say such a thing at your age? James sneered and pulled out the infusion needle from my hand. Liz, you're not a doctor like Emily. What can you do without me? The needle embedded in the back of my hand was pulled out, and blood dripped from my fingers onto the white bedsheet. It was so red that it was terrifying. The pain pierced through my heart. My son glanced at my hand stained with blood and continued to blame me together with his father. Mom, Dad is a well-known professor and needs an excellent person like Aunt Lynn to accompany him to important occasions. If you get a divorce now, Aunt Lynn will be drowned in the public's gossip. My husband and son only had Emily in their hearts and eyes. They only cared about their own interests. Not a single person cared about how I, the victim in this matter, actually felt. They had always been like this. I only then realized that for all these years, I had been lying to myself. I had been comforting myself all along. They just had a few more complaints. They still had me in their hearts. They were just men. And men were not good at expressing their feelings. But when something really happened, I finally realized, my husband, who had been with me through thick and thin for 30 years, and my son, whom I had raised with great difficulty, none of them cared about me, and in the past 30 years of my life, I only had them. I held on to the bedside and slowly moved down, but my legs were weak, and I almost knelt in front of the two of them. My last bit of pitiful dignity supported me to stand up. I staggered towards the door. Mom, Joseph was just about to stop me when James grabbed his arm. If she wants to leave, let her go. I want to see how many days she can live without me. I stumbled out of the hospital, and the cold wind quickly penetrated my thin hospital gown. Not far away, the large screen in the shopping mall was looping the scenery from all over the world. I remembered my ambitious words before saving James. One day, when I get into university and have a decent job, I will definitely travel around the great rivers and mountains of our motherland. Unfortunately, after getting married, I was trapped by the daily necessities of life. I lost myself. It seemed that since getting married, the meaning of my existence was to be a good wife and mother, to exist for taking care of and serving them, taking care of my husband, taking care of my children, taking care of my parents-in-law. I was the family's cook, the caregiver for the children, the doctor, and the nanny. But I was not myself. The dress I wanted to buy was always put back in place after much hesitation. The skincare products I wanted were always pushed to the bottom of the shopping cart after I thought about buying a pair of shoes for my child. I really wanted to live for myself once. I also loved beauty. I also wanted to be cherished. I collapsed, falling in front of a small clinic. I could feel the pain of my body hitting the ground, but I didn't have the strength to get up, before losing consciousness. I saw a familiar yet strange face. It seemed that I had seen it somewhere before, or it was like we were meeting for the first time. Liz, hey, wake up. The warm touch on my hand made me open my eyes suddenly. No one had ever stayed by my bedside waiting for me to wake up. The strange feeling, the strange place, and the strange person all made me feel a bit restless, until the person by the bedside raised his head and looked at me with sleepy eyes. Liz, is there anywhere you feel uncomfortable? I stared at the person in a daze. It turned out to be Leonard, my neighbor from my childhood. He was wearing a white coat, and the words Leonard Clinic were printed on his chest. I was a bit glad that I was really lucky to run into an old acquaintance like this. After I married James, I moved to the city. At that time, the situation was tense, and the city was very far from the mountainous area where my family lived. When I went back to my hometown again, it was already a year later. Leonard's family had already moved away. I heard from the villagers that Leonard had been admitted to a university in another place, and he seemed to be studying medicine. At that time, it was a great honor for a village to have a college student. His family held a big banquet in the village. Unexpectedly, joy turned to sorrow. Leonard's father drank too much, fell into a cesspool, and drowned. The happy event turned into a sad one. In order not to make his old mother feel sad at the sight of the place, Leonard took her with him to study at the university in another place. After 30 years, when we met again, he and I were no different from strangers, but it was precisely this stranger who, when my son and husband didn't care about me at all, silently stayed by my bedside, waiting for me to wake up. Tears streamed down my face in big drops, as if all the grievances of these years had found an outlet. Brother Leonard, woo-woo. It's so good to see you in the last few days of my life. When Leonard saw me crying, he couldn't hold back his tears either. He didn't seem surprised at all. Presumably, he had already seen the hospital identification bracelet on my wrist. That glaring red color was enough to explain everything. Leonard gently patted my shoulder, his eyes full of pity. Liz, don't say that. What do you mean by the last few days? I'm here. His voice was filled with an unshakable firmness, which warmed my heart. I choked up and poured out all my experiences of these years. Leonard listened quietly, his fists clenching tighter and tighter, and his face becoming more and more gloomy. How could James and your son do such a thing? Their consciences have been eaten by dogs. I shook my head with a bitter smile. Brother Leonard, it's no use talking about these things now. I know my own condition. When it came to my illness, I felt a wave of despair again. But Leonard suddenly stood up, gently patted my back, and soothed my emotions. Liz, don't lose heart. Several of my old classmates are experts in this field. They will definitely be able to find a suitable bone marrow for you. As he said this, he helped me up without giving me a chance to refuse and walked outside the clinic. I thought of something and quickly stopped. Brother Leonard, your wife, your family. He interrupted me. We got divorced after our child finished the college entrance examination. I was busy with my work at that time and neglected her and the child. By the time I realized it, it was already too late. She later married a foreigner and moved abroad. Don't worry about me. Your illness is the most important thing now. When we arrived at the hospital in the capital, Leonard was busy registering for me and finding a doctor. Looking at his back, my heart was filled with mixed feelings. After the examination results came out, the situation was not optimistic. But Leonard didn't give up. He contacted experts everywhere and looked for treatment plans. During this process, James and Joseph didn't even call once. It was as if I had completely disappeared from their world. Only Leonard always stayed by my side and paid the huge medical expenses for me without caring about the gains and losses. This made me feel very embarrassed, and I tried to sneak away several times. But he could always find me, just like when we played hide and seek when we were children. Don't think that just because you hide, I won't be able to find you. Even though we hadn't seen each other for many years, it seemed as if we had never been apart. Later, I learned from an expert that Leonard had retired last year. Before retiring, he was one of the top neurosurgeons in the country, but he didn't despise me as James did. Instead, he often told me about his experiences of studying and practicing medicine abroad over the years. The him in those stories was almost the same as the him in my memory, and also the same as myself in my memory. I once had the opportunity to have such a life. Every time I thought of this and saw myself in the mirror with all my hair gone, my face sallow and full of wrinkles, I would shed tears. One day, he sat by the bedside and looked at me seriously and said, Liz, when you recover from your illness, let's travel around the world together and fulfill your dream when you were young. My eyes were moist, and I shook my head. How could I dare to ask for more? Now I owe him so much that I can't even pay it back. But I didn't want to dampen his enthusiasm. I never boasted about traveling around the world. I said I wanted to travel around China. Even though I knew that the hope was slim, at that moment, I was willing to believe in a miracle. But as the days passed, my condition still fluctuated, and I became more and more emaciated. Leonard never slacked off for a moment. He cooked delicious food for me in different ways and encouraged me to fight against the disease. I originally thought that at my age, if I died, it would be okay. Anyway, before I died, I had been cherished by someone. But things never go as one wishes. As my illness worsened, I became extremely thin and weak, and I couldn't even lift my hand. Leonard had just set the meal and was about to feed me with a spoon. The door of the ward was kicked open from the outside. James walked in aggressively, followed by Emily, who was crying, and Joseph, who was supporting Emily. "I thought you were so capable that you could even come to the capital for treatment by yourself. I didn't expect you to have found a man outside. You don't care about your son and grandson at home anymore, do you?" James's voice was very loud, attracting people in the corridor to gather at our door to watch the scene. People whispered quietly, "This woman is something. Even at her age, she can make two old men fight over her." Cut. "I'm afraid she eloped with the old man outside and was caught by her family." Leonard ignored James and continued to feed me. I knew James's temper. He didn't just come here to lose his temper. I also didn't want Leonard to be involved in these messy things, and I especially didn't want his lifelong reputation to be ruined. I was going to ask Leonard to leave first, but James spoke first. "You two are really shameless. You still dare to act like this in front of me. You've really grown up, Liz." As he said this, he swung his fist towards Leonard. Leonard firmly held James's hand and turned to ask me, "If you don't want them here, I can ask the hospital staff to drive them away." I hesitated and didn't say anything. James wouldn't give up until he achieved his goal. He hadn't said the purpose of his visit this time. Even if we drove him away, he would come back. "James, what on earth are you here for?" James shook off Leonard's hand and said unkindly, "Don't you know what I'm here for? There are news about you and this man all over the internet." My son Joseph threw his phone in front of me, and his expression was as indignant as his father's. The headline of the news read, "Holding hands until old age, the husband never leaves his leukemia-stricken wife." The picture was the back view of Leonard carrying me downstairs for an examination a few days ago. I smiled bitterly and didn't know what to say for a moment. Was this retribution? It also made James experience the feeling I had when I saw the news about him and Emily. I returned the words he had said to me. "What do you know? A person who has never taken care of his seriously ill wife. He can take care of me and treat my illness. What about you? Besides blaming me, what else can you do? Do you know how aggrieved I've been in these 30 years? James was stunned and didn't say anything for a long time. There was disbelief in his eyes. Perhaps he couldn't believe that his wife, who had been submissive all her life, would one day abandon him. Perhaps he couldn't believe that even without him, there were still people who cherished me. Emily was crying pitifully beside him. She sobbed and said, "Sister Liz, we know we were wrong. Please forgive Brother Jing this time. Over the years, you have worked so hard to raise Joseph for me. I'm very grateful to you." There were gasps of surprise all around. I looked at Emily in disbelief. What was she talking about? "Didn't you say that Joseph was adopted by you from an orphanage?" I looked at James, wanting to get an answer from his face. Seeing James's suddenly guilty expression, in an instant, I understood everything. "Joseph is your child with Emily, right?" I looked at Emily coldly. This woman, who I had once thought was elegant and gentle, was still pitiful and endearing even in a mess, but I only felt that it was a bit difficult to breathe now. How dare they? Joseph quickly stepped forward. "Mom, come back with us quickly. Let's live a good life as a family. Don't stay with this outsider anymore." Outsider. The anger in my heart grew even stronger. Now they remembered that we were a family. When they left me alone in the hospital, and when the three of them appeared in the spotlight looking glorious, why didn't they think about who the outsider was? Now they wanted me, the fool who had raised someone else's child for 30 years, to go back and serve their family of 3. They really had no shame at all. Leonard stood in front of me and looked at James and the others with a determined expression. "Get out. The suffering Liz has endured over the years is more than all of you combined. Now she needs to rest and recover in peace. Don't come to disturb her anymore." James's face turned pale and then red. "Who do you think you are? It's none of your business to interfere in our family affairs." I struggled to sit up, and Leonard quickly supported me, looking at this farce in front of me. I no longer had any reluctance for my former husband and son. Instead, at the last moment of my life, I wanted to prove myself and show my determination. I wanted to live well and show them what I was capable of. I was never worse than anyone else. "James, don't forget that you were the one who abandoned me first. Since in these 30 years, you've only had Emily and your son in your eyes. Then go and live with her. Let's get a divorce, and I'll fulfill your wish, Brother Leonard." Drive them out. Seeing that I had made up my mind, Leonard directly pressed the call bell, until the nurse's voice came from the call bell. Okay, academician Leonard. The police are already on their way up. They repeatedly confirmed the content of the news. You are academician Leonard. Even Emily behind him looked at Leonard in disbelief and mumbled to herself, how is that possible? A lowly person like her couldn't possibly know an academician. It's all over, everything is over. I had no idea what she was talking about. It was not until they were taken away by the police that Leonard picked up the chopsticks and bowls again. While feeding me, he explained, after you told me about it, I went to look at their academic works and found that they had committed academic fraud. I'm sorry for not getting your consent in advance. I suddenly felt like crying and laughing at the same time. My mood was rather complicated for a moment. I was also a bit touched. The onlookers dispersed, and several people in white coats quickly walked towards us. Academician Leonard, MS. Liz's bone marrow matching is successful. A year later, I stood on the peak of the mountains, overlooking the valleys in the distance. Behind me was Leonard holding a live streaming device. Smile. There were more than 10,000 people online in the live broadcast room. They said, Auntie Liz, you are so beautiful, Auntie Liz. You should really live for yourself this time.